Hello there, and welcome to Science for Bedtime. I'm so glad you found your way here. Let your shoulders soften now, like snow settling onto a quiet rooftop, and let your breath grow slow, slow as a river slipping beneath the moon. Wherever you are tonight, whether your room is dim and warm, whether the world outside is hushed and still, allow yourself to simply arrive. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is nothing more you need to do. The day is finished, and the evening is gently folding itself around you, like a soft, well-loved blanket. Tonight, we are going to travel somewhere extraordinary. Together, we are going to follow the slow, silver thread of a great river, northward, through old forests and quiet meadows, through fields where the long grass leans in the wind, until we reach one of the most wondrous places on earth, Niagara Falls, a place where water has been falling, and falling, and falling, for thousands upon thousands of years, a place of mist and rainbows, of drifting clouds, of ancient rocks and patient currents. We will float gently through 100 soft and lovely facts about this great cascade, each one a small, glowing pebble, dropped into the deep, still pond of your mind. If you find your eyes growing heavy, if you find the words drifting like leaves on a quiet stream, that is exactly as it should be. And if it feels right at any moment, you might gently tap the like button or subscribe to Science for Bedtime, so that more of these slow, soothing journeys can find you. Whenever sleep feels far away, such a small, kind gesture helps this little candle keep glowing in the dark. So now, let your eyes close. If they wish to close, let your body sink a little deeper into the bed. Let your hands grow soft. Let your jaw unclench, and let's begin this slow and soothing journey together toward the sound of falling water and the gentle hush of sleep. Imagine now that we are standing together at the edge of a quiet path. Somewhere in the soft hush of a northern evening, the air is cool and clean. Pine and cedar drift on the breeze. Beneath our feet, the earth is mossy and forgiving. And far ahead, so far that it is still only a whisper, we can hear it, a low, distant murmur, the voice of falling water, older than memory. With each gentle step, the sound grows nearer, softer, lovelier. Let us walk together now, unhurried, toward the great cascade, and let the first quiet fact rise to meet us. Like mist on still water, Niagara Falls is not, in truth, a single waterfall, but a gentle gathering of three soft sisters of mist and stone, standing side by side along a great curving cliff. There is the Horseshoe Falls, the largest and most graceful of them, bending like a quiet bow drawn across the river. There is the American Falls, broad and steady, draped like a long curtain of moving silver. And there is the smaller Bridal Veil Falls, slender and shimmering, as if spun from the finest lace. Together, they pour from the same wide river, the same patient current, yet each one falls in its own soft voice. Three sisters, three songs, three trembling veils of light. And as the river meets the cliff's edge, parts gently among them, like a long ribbon untied by a careful hand, drifting downward in shining, endless folds. The river that feeds these falls is called the Niagara, a slow and steady traveler with a long, quiet history. It is born from the great inland sea of Lake Erie, gathering itself in still bays and reeded shallows before beginning its gentle journey north. For about 36 miles, it flows softly between low green banks, beneath bridges and old willow trees, past sleeping islands and long stretches of meadow. It moves without hurry, without worry, its surface reflecting the changing colors of the sky, and only when it reaches the great cliff does it transform into thunder and silver. Before that, it is simply a river, calm and conversational, murmuring to the reeds, to the herons, to the round, smooth stones beneath its flow, a long, patient ribbon of water, journeying quietly toward its single, breathtaking moment. The Niagara River carries water from 4 of the 5 Great Lakes. Imagine that for a soft, slow moment. Within its currents, there is melted snow that once rested upon the shoulders of distant mountains. There are raindrops that fell upon the spruce forests of Superior, the marshes of Michigan, the quiet shores of Huron, the gentle bays of Erie. All of that water, gathered from such immense, faraway places, flows together here, mingling like old companions before they tumble over the edge. Each drop has traveled hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles, to arrive at this one cliff. Each drop has its own long, watery story. And tonight, as you breathe slowly in your bed, those drops are still moving, still gathering, still falling in their own unhurried way. Beneath the quiet northern sky, the falls sit gently along the border between 2 great countries, the United States and Canada. The river itself draws the line, soft and wandering, the way a child might trace a thread across a map. On one side, the lights of New York glimmer warmly through the trees. On the other, the lights of Ontario shine across the water in welcoming colors. Yet the river does not seem to know about borders. It flows where it has always flowed, untouched by names or maps or the gentle business of nations. It simply pours, freely and beautifully, between 2 lands that share its mist, its rainbows, its long, soft music. And in this way, the falls have become a quiet meeting place where 2 countries stand together, side by side, watching the same patient waterfall of the 3 sisters. The Horseshoe Falls is by far the largest, curving in a wide, gentle arc that resembles its namesake. It stretches more than 2,000 feet across, a long, sweeping crescent of moving water. Imagine, if you will, a great curtain of silk being drawn slowly around a quiet stage, its folds catching the light. That is the shape the horseshoe takes. Hour after hour, year after year, most of the river's water flows over this graceful curve. More than 9/10 of it, in fact, and so it pours and pours, deep and steady, with the soft, low voice of distant thunder. The horseshoe is the great hush at the heart of the falls, the slow, breathing center of the place, where the river bends like a tired traveler finally laying down its long, long road. The American Falls is the second of the 3, a long and lovely cliff of falling water on the United States side of the river. It stretches nearly 1,000 feet wide, its waters spilling straight down in a great shining wall. Below it lies a soft mound of fallen rocks, gathered slowly over many quiet centuries, where the water lands in white-feathered bursts. From a distance, it looks like a long curtain of polished glass, gently rippling, gently moving, gently shimmering in the light. Birds sometimes drift across its face, small dark commas against the silver. Mist rises from its base like the slow breath of a sleeping animal. And though it is quieter than its larger sister, it carries its own kind of beauty, steady and unhurried, like a long, patient note held softly on a single string. The smallest of the 3 sisters is the Bridal Veil Falls, a slender, shimmering cascade that flows beside the American Falls, separated only by a tiny wooded island. It is narrow and graceful, no wider than a quiet country lane, and the water that pours over it falls in soft, lacy patterns. From below, it truly does resemble a wedding veil, long and translucent, swaying gently in the breeze. Mist rises from its foot in delicate, rosy clouds, and on bright days, small rainbows curl around it like ribbons. There is something tender about the bridal veil, something hushed and intimate. Where the larger falls roar and rumble, this one whispers. It is the soft sigh between deeper breaths, the gentle hush within the larger song, a slender thread of silver woven through the great, glowing tapestry of the falls. The little island that separates the American Falls from the bridal veil is called Lunar Island. It is a small, quiet place, no larger than a meadow, dressed in old trees and soft pathways. Its name comes from the silvery light that often plays upon it at night, when the moon rises above the river and pours its glow across the mist. From Lunar Island, you can stand between two falls and feel them on either side, like standing between two great curtains in a dim, beautiful theater. The air there is always cool and damp. The trees lean a little, shaped by years of mist, and in the moonlight, the whole island seems to glow faintly, as if dusted with the softest, most patient silver, gathered slowly from the long, watery breath of the river. There is a larger island just upstream from the falls, called Goat Island. It sits like a green stepping stone in the middle of the river, gently dividing its flow between the horseshoe and the American sides. The island is wooded and peaceful, full of old trees and winding walking paths. Squirrels rustle in the undergrowth. Songbirds call from the branches. The river slips quietly around its banks, slow and almost lazy, before reaching the great drop just beyond. Standing on Goat Island feels like standing in the calm heart of something enormous, with the river flowing past on both sides, a long whisper to the left, a long whisper to the right. It is one of the gentlest places near the falls, a small green pause within the great unfolding song of moving water. The name Goat Island has a quiet little story behind it. Long ago, in the 18th century, a settler named John Stedman kept a small herd of goats on the island during the warm months, where they could graze on the sweet wild grasses. One winter, the river froze and the cold grew very deep, and many of the goats did not survive. Only one, it is said, came through the long, white season. From that small, soft tale, the island took its name, and has carried it gently ever since. There is something tender about an entire island being named for a single, quiet animal. As you drift here in your bed, imagine that one surviving goat, standing alone in the spring sunlight, watching the river flow past, the great falls singing softly in the distance. The waters of Niagara are usually a soft, dreamy green, especially as they pour over the Horseshoe Falls. This gentle color comes from the tiny minerals and rock flour that the river carries within it, gathered slowly over its long journey. Imagine a great bowl of liquid jade, lit from within by the sun. The light passes through the moving water and is colored softly along the way, emerging as that quiet, glowing green. On bright days, the falls seem almost luminous, as if the river itself were filled with cool, clean glass. The mist that rises is touched with this color too, faintly, and the rainbows that arch above are stitched into the green with threads of rose and gold, making the whole place feel like a living, breathing painting drawn in the softest, most patient hues. Rainbows are constant companions of the falls, drifting in and out with the changing light. They form when sunlight passes through the rising mist, each tiny droplet acting as a small, gentle prism. On clear, sunny days, you can sometimes see double rainbows, two perfect arcs glowing one above the other, stitched across the sky. There is a certain magic to standing beside them, watching the colors lean gently into the white spray. The rainbows are never quite the same from one moment to the next. They drift, they fade, they brighten, they curl with the wind. Some last only seconds. Others linger for hours, and every one of them is made of the same simple ingredients, light and water. dancing softly together, painting the world in colors so old that even the river itself has been watching them for thousands of quiet years. There are also rainbows that appear at night at Niagara, when the moon is bright and the air is just right. These are called moonbows or lunar rainbows, and they are far rarer than their daytime cousins. Their colors are softer, almost ghostly, more like memory than paint. To see one, you must be there beneath a full moon, with mist drifting in just the right direction, in the deep hush of a clear, cool night. They appear like shy, silver bridges arching across the falls, glowing pale and dreamy, holding for only a few quiet moments before slipping away. There is something deeply tender about a moonbow, something half dream, half real. Just imagining one is enough to slow the breath, to soften the eyelids, to let the heart rest into a deeper, gentler kind of stillness. The mist of Niagara rises in great, slow plumes, soft as breath on a cold morning. On still days, it can climb hundreds of feet into the air, drifting upward in slow, curling clouds. From far away, you can see this mist long before you see the falls themselves, hanging above the trees like a tall, white feather standing on its end. Sailors of old, traveling down the river, often spotted the mist first and used it as a kind of signal, a soft, drifting beacon, even today. On quiet mornings, the mist seems alive, swaying gently with the wind, lit pink at sunrise, gold at sunset, lavender at dusk. It rises and is gently carried away on the breeze, until it dissolves softly into the sky, returning quietly to the great, breathing weather of the world. Because of all that mist, there is a great deal of water in the air around the falls, and this gentle dampness has shaped a unique little world. Small ferns grow thickly along the cliffs. Mosses cover the stones in layers of deep, velvety green. The trees that lean over the gorge are draped in lichens, soft and grey-blue. Walking along the paths near the falls, you can feel the cool, wet kiss of the air on your skin, even when there is no rain. It is a place where plants thrive on water alone, drinking from the very air around them. The mist nourishes everything, hour after hour, year after year, and so the gorge has become a slow, lush garden, hanging gently above the river, kept alive entirely by the soft, patient breath of the falls. Beneath the falling water, deep within the gorge, the river churns and folds upon itself, then settles into a long, deep pool. This pool is calm on its surface, quiet and dark, but it is enormously deep. The water beneath continues to swirl and turn, slow and silent, like the great breath of the earth itself. From the cliffs above, this pool looks like a long, silvery mirror, reflecting the sky and the trees. Boats sometimes drift across it, looking very small against its wide, glassy face. Below them, the river continues its journey, slipping along the bottom of the gorge, carrying the memory of its great fall onward toward the next quiet bend. The pool is the rest after the song, the long, deep breath after the cry, the soft hush after the music has finished. Just below the falls, the river is at its deepest, plunging down to nearly 200 feet in some quiet places. That is deeper than many tall buildings are high. Below the surface, the water is cold and dim, lit only by the gentlest filtered light. Fish move slowly there, drifting in the shadowed currents. Old logs and stones, dropped into the river long ago, rest peacefully on the bottom, half buried in soft sediment. There is a stillness down there that is almost timeless. Above, the falls roar and tumble, but below, in those deep, cool depths, the water rests and the years pass slowly. Imagine that hush, that long, dark blue stillness, far below the silver and the spray. It is its own quiet world, gentle and old, breathing in time with the long pulse of the river. The Niagara Gorge stretches for miles below the falls. A long, winding canyon carved patiently by the river over thousands of years. Its walls are tall and rocky, sometimes wooded, sometimes bare, with layers of stone visible like the pages of an old book. Trees cling to the slopes, leaning out into the open air. Hawks ride the warm winds along the cliffs. Far below, the river flows on, slow and powerful. The gorge feels like a great open hallway, a long passage between high stone walls, where the river is both the visitor and the slow, careful builder. Each year, it carries a tiny bit more of the cliff away, deepening the gorge inch by inch. So the river is always shaping its own home, gently, gently, with infinite patience. The falls have not always stood where they stand today. In fact, they have been slowly traveling backward, upstream, for thousands of years, as the water pours over the cliff, gradually wears the rock away, just a small amount each year, but over centuries, that adds up. Long ago, the falls were several miles downstream from their current spot. Slowly, slowly, like a long line of footsteps, they have made their way upriver. Imagine that for a moment. A waterfall walking, taking countless quiet centuries with each tiny step. By the time anyone notices the change, lifetimes have come and gone. The falls move so slowly that they seem entirely still. And yet, they are always traveling, always shaping their own gentle path, like a sleeping creature dreaming itself slowly across the land. This slow, backward walk of the falls is sometimes called erosion, but it might be gentler to call it a slow remembering, the river softly returning to itself, reshaping its bed with every breath. Over time, it has carved out the entire gorge, mile by patient mile. Each pebble, each grain of sand carried away, is a small, soft signature of time. Scientists have studied these marks like the rings of a great old tree, reading them to understand the long history of the place. And what they find is a story written in the simplest of materials: water, stone, gravity, and time. There is something deeply reassuring about that, a reminder that even the grandest, most thunderous things in the world are made by patience, slow drops gathered into rivers, slow rivers gathered into wonder. The rocks beneath Niagara are very old, formed about 430 million years ago, when the area lay beneath a warm, shallow sea. In those quiet ages, tiny shells and corals settled gently to the seabed, layer upon layer, until they became stone. If you look closely at the cliffs of the gorge, you can sometimes see the soft fossils of these ancient creatures, locked into the rock like memories pressed into a long page. The whole great waterfall, with all its noise and rainbows, rests upon the silent record of an ocean that disappeared so long ago that no one alive ever saw it. Yet the gentle creatures of that vanished sea are still there, still holding up the falls, still cradling all that thunder in their old, peaceful arms. The top layer of these cliffs is made of a tough, hardy stone called dolostone, while underneath are softer layers of shale. The water of the falls slowly washes away the softer shale beneath. Hour after hour, year after year, eventually, the harder dolostone above has nothing left to support it, and it tumbles gently down into the river. This is part of why the falls move backward over time. The soft layers wearing away first, the hard cap finally giving way. It is a long, slow dance between strong and soft, between patient and yielding. And although it may sound dramatic, the changes happen in such tiny increments that, on most days, you would never notice. The falls simply look the same, eternal and unchanged, even as they quietly reshape themselves beneath the misty hush of every passing year. Long, long ago, near the end of the last great ice age, the falls first came into being. As the vast glaciers melted and retreated northward, they left behind enormous lakes of clear, cold water. These lakes began to spill toward the sea, and in doing so, the river found its way over a high cliff for the first time. Imagine that morning, if you can, a vast, hushed land, mostly silent except for the new sound of falling water beginning its very first song. There were no cities, no roads, no ships, just the wind, the spruce forests, the soft clouds, and the river quietly discovering its voice. From that ancient beginning, the falls have been singing ever since, a low, gentle song that has lasted longer than any kingdom, any language, any name. When the first peoples of the Great Lakes region looked upon the falls, they understood them as sacred. The Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the neutral nations all held the falls in deep respect. Names and stories were given to them with great care, and the place itself was considered alive, worthy of gentleness and offering. The very name Niagara is thought to come from a word meaning something like the strait, or the thunder of waters, drawn from the languages of the people who knew the land first and best. Long before any visitor wrote about the falls in books or newspapers, there were already songs about them, prayers near them, footpaths winding softly along the gorge. The falls were already loved, already honored, already gently woven into the long, deep dream of the land. The first written account of Niagara Falls by a European traveler came from a man named Father Louis Hennepin, a Belgian priest. In the late 17th century, he stood at the edge of the gorge and tried, with simple, trembling words, to describe what he saw. He wrote of an incredible flood of water, of a great mist rising into the sky, and of a sound like continuous thunder. His words spread across Europe in books and letters, and many people, half a world away, dreamed of seeing the falls for themselves. It is gentle to imagine that long-ago priest, standing alone at the cliff's edge, his cloak damp with mist, struggling to fit such a vast and tender wonder into ordinary words. The falls, of course, simply went on falling, indifferent and beautiful, as they always have. In the centuries that followed, more and more travelers made the long, slow journey to see Niagara. They came on horseback, by carriage, by boat, by foot. They came in fine clothes and in worn boots. Some came as scientists, some as artists, some simply as dreamers who had heard whispers of a great wonder in the wilderness. There were no fast roads then, no quick paths. To reach the falls was a journey of days or weeks, sometimes longer. And so when travelers finally arrived, weary and dusty, the first sight of those rising mists, the first low murmur of falling water, must have felt like stepping into a long-promised dream. Many wrote afterward that nothing they had seen before, no painting, no poem, no story, had quite prepared them for the soft, breathtaking immensity of the place. By the early 1800s, Niagara had become one of the most beloved travel destinations in the world. Honeymooners began to journey there in great numbers, drawn by its beauty and its romance. There is something about the falls, something about that endless flow of water, that feels deeply tender, deeply suited to new beginnings. Couples would walk arm in arm along the gorge, watching the rainbows drift across the mist, listening to the long, low song of the river. Hotels grew up along the cliffs to welcome them. Photographers waited near the viewing points to capture small, soft moments, and so Niagara became, in many people's hearts, a place of love itself, a great natural cathedral where vows seemed to settle into the very mist, lingering there long after the travelers had gone home. A long stone bridge once spanned the gorge below the falls, its arches reaching softly across the water. There have been many bridges over the years, each one different, each one beautiful in its own way. The current Rainbow Bridge, built in 1941, is named for the soft, glowing arches of color that often appear in the mist nearby. It carries travelers gently between Canada and the United States. High above the swirling river, standing on the bridge, you feel suspended between two countries, two lands, two soft voices. Below, the water churns slowly. Above, the sky drifts past in clouds and birds. The bridge itself seems quiet, patient, almost ceremonial, like a long, graceful arm stretched between two friends, holding the air steady so that travelers can pass between them in peace. The first known person to ride over the falls in a barrel was a 63-year-old schoolteacher named Annie Edson Taylor in 1901. With great care, she had a wooden barrel made and lined with cushions, and on her birthday, she climbed inside and let the river carry her over the Horseshoe Falls. Astonishingly, she survived. When they opened the barrel below, she stepped out a little dizzy, a little bruised, but alive. She had hoped to find fame and comfort with her brave little adventure. Whether she found them or not, her name has lingered ever since. Gently passed from one generation to the next, there is something quietly remarkable about a school teacher choosing such a daring path, and yet, in our story tonight, she rests softly in our minds as one more drop in the long river of human wonder. Beneath the Horseshoe Falls, there is a place called the Cave of the Winds, though it is not really a cave at all. It is a series of wooden walkways tucked behind and beside the Bridal Veil Falls, where visitors can stand close enough to feel the spray on their faces. The wind there moves in gentle bursts, swirling with mist and droplets, cool and alive. To stand in that place is to feel the breath of the river itself, soft and rushing, all around you. People wear thin yellow ponchos as they walk through, glowing like little lanterns against the green and silver. And although the spray is steady, there is a deep, kind sweetness to being there, surrounded entirely by the quiet exhalation of the falls. As if you have stepped briefly inside a great, patient cloud, there is a charming old boat called the Maid of the Mist, which has been carrying travelers close to the base of the falls since 1846. It is a small, sturdy ship that drifts gently into the foggy heart of the river, where the mist rises in great soft pillars. From its decks, you can look up and see the falls towering above you, vast and trembling, the water pouring down in countless ribbons. The boat moves slowly, almost shyly, into that thunderous, gentle place. Passengers hold the rails. The mist gathers in their hair. The roar of water surrounds them like a deep, soft music, and then the little boat turns and slowly slips away again, back toward the calmer waters, leaving the falls to keep singing, untouched, undisturbed, as they have for countless quiet centuries. There is a similar little fleet on the Canadian side, called the Hornblower, more recently named the Niagara City Cruises. These boats also carry their passengers close to the foot of the falls, drifting gently through the mist and shadow. From their decks, you can see the great curving curtain of the Horseshoe Falls bending around you, almost hugging the boat in its long, wet arms. The sound is enormous and soft all at once, a low rumble that you feel as much as here, deep in the chest, like the breathing of some vast, sleeping creature. And yet within that great noise, there is somehow a kind of peace. The boats themselves seem small and trusting, as if the river had agreed long ago to be gentle with them, to let them visit briefly and then carry them safely back home. The water of Niagara is in constant motion, but it is also constantly changing in temperature. In the summer, it is cool and refreshing, a soft balm against the warmth of the air. In the winter, it grows very cold, almost icy, drifting in long, slow, glassy currents. The mist that rises in summer is light and warm, drifting lazily upward like the breath of a sleeping child. The mist of winter, however, is heavier, often freezing as soon as it lands, coating trees, fences, and railings in a soft, white frost. And so the falls have many faces, many moods, gentle in every season. They are like an old, quiet friend who dresses differently depending on the time of year, but whose voice, deep and steady and reassuring, never truly changes. In the very deep cold of winter, the mist sometimes builds upon the surrounding trees, layer by patient layer, until everything is wrapped in thick, sparkling ice. The branches glitter like glass in the morning sun. The fences shine. The railings glow. Even the lampposts and benches grow long, slender beards of frost. From a distance, the whole landscape near the falls can look as if it has been dipped in clear sugar. Walking through it feels like walking through a soft, luminous fairy tale. The trees creak gently with the weight of the ice. Tiny, glittering droplets fall now and then with a small, quiet sound. And above it all, the falls keep pouring, their mist still rising, their breath still feeding the ice. Slowly, slowly, like a patient artist painting the world in winter white. There is a famous, gentle tale that, in the very deep cold of certain winter, the falls themselves seemed to freeze over. The water did not truly stop falling, but vast, beautiful sheets of ice would build along the cliff and base until the whole thing looked still. Beneath the great, white shell, the water continued to flow, hidden and quiet, like a song still being sung beneath a heavy blanket. People in those days would walk out onto the frozen river, taking long, hushed strolls across what is normally pure, swirling motion. Vendors would set up small stalls on the ice. Children would play, slipping and laughing softly. It was a strange, dreamy time, a winter so deep that the very thunder of Niagara seemed to drift into hush, like a child's voice fading gently into sleep. In 1948, on a quiet day in late March, the falls did something even more extraordinary. For about 30 hours, the flow of the American Falls slowed almost to a stop. A great ice jam upstream in the river blocked much of the water from coming through. People looked out and could hardly believe what they saw, only a thin trickle of water moving over the cliff. Visitors walked along the dry rocks, gazing in wonder at the bones of a place that had always been hidden. Then, gently, the ice broke, the water returned, and Niagara began to sing again. It was as if the falls had simply paused, taking one deep breath, before resuming their long, soft song. A small, quiet wonder within the larger wonder, slipping gently into history. Long after that, in 1969, engineers actually turned off the American Falls on purpose for several months to study the rocks beneath. Great steel and earthen barriers were built upstream to redirect the water toward the horseshoe side. The exposed cliff was inspected, photographed, and very gently considered. People came to walk among the dry stones where the river had always poured. Many wrote that they felt as if they were standing inside a great secret, finally allowed to see what had always been hidden by water. After several quiet months, the barriers were taken away, and the falls returned, just as before. To this day, that strange, dry season is remembered fondly, like an old photograph kept in a soft, paper envelope at the back of a quiet drawer. The water of the falls flows from Lake Erie down toward Lake Ontario, dropping more than 300 feet along its journey. Most of that drop happens at the falls themselves, but the river continues to fall gently for many more miles afterward. Along the way, it passes through many smaller rapids, each one a softer cousin of the Great Cascade. These rapids tumble and dance over hidden stones, white and bright, before settling into deeper, calmer pools. The river never quite rests, but it does grow quieter as it nears Lake Ontario, broadening, softening, finally pouring into that great inland sea. By the time the water arrives there, it has traveled a long way, sung many soft songs, and is finally ready to settle. Vast and still, beneath the Canadian and northern New York skies, Lake Ontario, the gentle resting place of the river, is the smallest of the Great Lakes, but still enormously large. Large enough to behave almost like a sea, its waters stretch beyond the horizon, vanishing into a soft, blue line where the sky and lake become one. Sailing ships have crossed it for centuries, leaning gently with the wind. Fishermen drift quietly along its shores, casting lines into the deep water. From the air, it looks like a great, calm mirror laid across the land, holding the shapes of clouds and stars. After all the rushing of the river, all the falling and tumbling and roaring, the water here grows still and unhurried, like a long-traveling friend finally settling into a deep, comfortable chair, exhaling, resting, breathing slowly with the wind. Many kinds of fish make their homes in the Niagara River and the lakes that feed it. There are smallmouth bass, drifting near rocky ledges. There are walleye, with their soft golden eyes, slipping through the deeper pools. There are northern pike, long and patient, waiting in the cool shadows. Lake sturgeon, ancient, gentle giants, glide through the deeper waters, their bodies covered in soft, bony plates that have not changed for millions of years. In quiet shallows, schools of small minnows shimmer like silver coins. The river is alive with them, all moving softly beneath its sparkling surface. From above, the water may look empty, but below there is a constant, gentle traffic of fins and tails, a slow, beautiful underwater dance that has been going on, hour after quiet hour, for ages and ages. Birds, too, find a deep welcome at the falls. Gulls drift in great soft clouds above the gorge, calling to one another in the wind. Ducks paddle along quieter parts of the river. Herons stand in the reeds, perfectly still, their long shadows folded into the water. In autumn, great flocks of waterfowl pass through on their long migrations, resting on the river before continuing south. In summer, songbirds fill the trees of Goat Island and the parks along the cliffs, their voices weaving softly into the murmur of the falls. Even hawks and eagles ride the rising winds above the gorge, circling slowly in wide, patient arcs. The falls are not just a great waterfall, but a great gathering place, a place where wings of every kind have always come and gone, season after gentle season. The trees that grow near the falls are mostly hardy northern species, suited to the cool, damp air. There are old maples, their leaves turning to crimson and amber in autumn. There are oaks and beeches, their roots tangled deeply in the rocky soil. Birches stand pale and graceful along the banks of the river. Pines and hemlocks hold their soft green needles through the winter, dusted in snow. The trees seem to lean a little, slightly, in the direction of the river, shaped over the years by the constant breath of the mist. Their leaves are often glossy, well-watered, deep in color. Walking among them is like walking through a long, hushed cathedral, with sunlight falling in soft beams between the branches and the river, singing gently somewhere just beyond the trees. Wildflowers bloom in the meadows and along the paths near the falls in spring and summer. Trilliums lift their 3 white petals from the forest floor. Trout lilies open their soft yellow blossoms in early sun. Wild geraniums and violets dot the woodlands in tender pinks and purples. Along the riverbanks, milkweed grows tall, calling butterflies in by the dozens. In late summer, goldenrod and asters add their warm colors to the long meadows, glowing like soft, slow flames. Bees move quietly among the flowers, going about their patient work. Imagine all of these gentle blossoms, growing in their season, just upstream and downstream of the falls, painting the land in colors that change with each passing month, while the great waterfall sings its long song nearby, hour after quiet. Soothing hour, Butterflies are especially lovely near Niagara. There is even a beautiful indoor butterfly conservatory on the Canadian side, where thousands of butterflies live among warm, tropical plants and quiet pools. To walk through it is to step into a soft, fluttering dream. Butterflies rest gently on flowers, on leaves, sometimes on the shoulders of visitors. Their wings are colored like little stained glass windows, all blues and oranges and whispering blacks. Outside, monarch butterflies drift along the river in late summer, beginning their long journey south. Swallowtails flutter in the meadows. Tiny blues and skippers move close to the ground. They all seem so weightless, so dreamy, as if the air itself were carrying them along like soft, painted petals tossed gently into the breath of the wind, never quite landing. Above the falls, there are also quieter creatures, the small ones we rarely see, but who fill the place with hidden life. Chipmunks dart along stone walls, their cheeks full. Squirrels gather acorns under the oak trees. Raccoons move through the underbrush at twilight, their soft paws careful in the leaves. Foxes sometimes pass quietly through the parks at dawn or dusk, their red coats glowing in the low light. Owls call from the treetops at night, their voices low and patient. Each of these small lives is woven softly into the great fabric of the place. The falls do not belong to humans alone. They belong, just as deeply, to all these gentle, secret creatures who pass through their own little days beneath the same long song of falling water. In the warmer months, fireflies gather near the river at dusk, drifting through the meadows in soft, golden flashes. They rise from the long grass like tiny, slow stars. Children chase them gently, hands cupped in wonder. Adults watch them too, often without speaking, simply standing in the long, blue twilight, letting the little lights weave their patterns through the deepening dark. The falls, just beyond, glow faintly with their own colors, lit by gentle floodlights at night. Together, the fireflies and the falls make a soft, dreamy world, one of small lights and great waters, of tiny wings and vast, slow rivers. There is something deeply peaceful about that scene, something that seems to belong to a much older, much quieter version of the world, where everything moved at the speed of breath. At night, the falls themselves are illuminated by colored lights from the Canadian shore. Soft blues, gentle greens, warm pinks, tender purples, all wash across the falling water in slow, changing waves. From a distance, it can look as if the river has dressed itself in pure, glowing silk, scarves of color drifting one into the next. The lights are soft and patient, never harsh, never blinding. Visitors stand along the railings and watch, often in soft silence. Some take photographs, some simply hold hands, some lean against the stone walls, letting the sight settle into them slowly. The falls have been lit this way, in some form, for many decades now, and so generations of people have stood there, watching the river dressed in colors, listening to its steady song beneath the gentle rainbow of the night. There are also fireworks displays over the falls during the summer evenings, and on holidays, soft bursts of red, gold, and blue bloom above the mist, reflected in the dark, moving water below. The booms are gentle from a distance, like distant thunder. The lights blossom and fade. Blossom and fade. Children point upward in wonder. The falls themselves continue their long song, indifferent and beautiful, beneath the spectacle. There is something especially tender about fireworks above water, the way the river holds the lights in its surface, painting them again, briefly, before they slip away. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that quiet show, the long, low rumble of the falls, the soft pops of color overhead, and the river, ever flowing, gently catching every fading light into its deep, dark dream. The amount of water that flows over the falls is enormous, Though the exact number varies through the year, on most summer days, more than 700,000 gallons per second pour over the cliffs. In the winter, slightly less. To imagine that, picture a vast lake being poured, second by second, over the edge of a great cup. And yet, despite the enormity, the falls seem to move with a kind of dreamy slowness, especially when seen from far away. Their motion is always soft to the eye. Even though the volume is colossal, there is a deep peace in this contradiction. In something so powerful seeming, somehow, so calm. Perhaps that is the secret heart of Niagara. That great strength, when it is patient, looks tender. That huge motion, when it is constant, looks like rest. Some of the water from the river is carefully borrowed for hydroelectric power, especially at night. Long ago, engineers designed great, quiet stations along the river to gather this energy, turning falling water into light and warmth for many faraway homes. At night, more water is used for power. During the day, especially in the busy summer, more is allowed to pour over the falls, so visitors can see the full glory. It is a soft, balanced arrangement, a kind of quiet partnership between people and the river. Even in this, there is something tender. The river still flows, still sings, still dazzles, but it also helps light the bedside lamps of distant strangers, gently warming their kitchens, gently glowing in their windows, in towns and cities, far from the misty hush of the falls themselves. The first hydroelectric station near Niagara was built in the late 1800s, and it changed the world in soft, far-reaching ways. Before that, electricity was a fragile, local thing, traveling only short distances. But the engineers at Niagara helped show that great power could be sent across many miles of wire, lighting up cities far from any waterfall. From those quiet beginnings, towns across North America began to glow with electric light. Street lamps came on in the evenings. Factories whirred softly. Homes grew warm in winter. And all of it began, in part, with the gentle falling of water through Niagara, the patient pouring of the river through hidden turbines. The falls had always been a wonder of nature. From that moment on, they became, in their own quiet way, a wonder of human kindness, too. The famous inventor Nikola Tesla played a deep, soft role in the development of Niagara's power. His work on alternating current made it possible to send electricity over long distances. Today, on Goat Island, there is a gentle statue of Tesla, gazing thoughtfully out toward the falls. He stands with a book in his hand, looking at once dreamy and patient. It feels right that he should rest there, near the river that helped carry his ideas to the world. Imagine him, on a clear evening, watching the mist rise into the sunset, thinking quietly of currents and circuits, of distant cities lighting up one by one. The falls and the inventor are bound softly together in the long story of the place, a tale of patient water and patient thought, joined into a single, glowing dream. There is a smaller, very lovely waterfall not far from Niagara, called Bridal Falls in some old descriptions, though most modern travelers know it by other names. It tumbles down through quiet woodlands, much smaller, much gentler than its great cousin. Walking trails wind beside it, lined with mossy stones. Songbirds call from the trees overhead. The water there is clear and cold, and the noise it makes is more like a soft sigh than a roar. Many visitors, after the great wonder of Niagara, come to this little place to rest their senses, letting the smaller song wash over them. There is something humble and refreshing about a tiny waterfall, especially after one has stood in the presence of an enormous one. It reminds us that beauty does not have to be vast, only true. Throughout the gorge, there are many smaller falls and rapids hidden among the cliffs. Some pour from old streams that have carved their way down to the river. Others appear after rains, briefly tracing silver lines along the rock. There are sweet little places along the trails where you can stand on a wooden bridge and watch a small cascade tumble through ferns and moss, its voice gentle and quick. Each one is like a soft, lesser child of the great falls, each carrying its own tune, each glittering in the light. Together they fill the gorge with countless quiet songs, like a choir of small voices joined gently to a great, deep one. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the long gorge, full of these soft sounds, all moving together in one slow, glittering chorus. The whirlpool is a wide, slow circle of swirling water just downstream from the falls. Where the river makes a sharp, gentle turn, the water gathers there, deep and turning, as if pausing to think before continuing its journey. From the cliffs above, it looks like a vast, slow wheel, lazily revolving on its own. Sometimes pieces of driftwood drift around its edges, slowly, slowly. Riding the great turning, there is even a small cable car, called the Whirlpool Aero Car, that crosses high above the swirling pool, suspended on long, patient cables. Riding it feels like floating gently across a giant bowl of green and silver water. The whirlpool is one of the dreamiest places along the gorge, a place of slow turning and quiet thought, where the river takes a long, soft breath before moving on. The aero car, suspended above the whirlpool, has been carrying travelers safely back and forth since 1916. It is a sturdy little cabin, painted in red and yellow, drifting gently from one cliff to the other. From inside, you can look down on the great spinning water and out across the gorge to the wooded slopes beyond. The motion is slow, almost dreamlike, the cables humming softly above. Children press their hands to the windows. Adults grow quiet, listening to the wind. The world below seems suddenly small, the river a long ribbon of moving silk, the cliffs deep folds of green. There is something deeply soothing about that ride, the gentle sway, the slow crossing, the kind, careful arrival at the other side, while the river dreams on beneath you, turning and turning. Within the woods near the falls, there is a deep stillness in the very early morning, before the first visitors arrive. Before the boats begin their tours, the trees stand quiet. The river flows softly, and the mist drifts upward in long, lazy spirals. Birds wake one by one, their calls soft and shy. Sunlight slips through the branches in pale yellow beams. Even the falls themselves seem gentler at that hour, their voice somehow muted, their motion slow. To stand by the river, then, is to feel as if you are sharing a secret with the place, the kind of stillness that exists only when most of the world is still asleep. The falls have always begun their day in this hushed way, breathing softly into the dawn, long before anyone is there to listen. In the late evening, after the last of the day's visitors have gone home, the falls take on yet another mood. The colored lights play across the water, painting it in slow shades. The sky above turns from blue to violet to deep, deep navy. The first stars appear, faint and trembling, above the rising mist. The crowds thin, the voices fade, and the falls, freed from the gentle attention of the day, return to their long, quiet song. Late at night, you can sometimes hear them from far away, a low, soft hum that seems to come from everywhere at once. Those who live nearby say they grow used to that sound, falling asleep to it, waking to it, until it becomes almost a part of their own breathing. A long, quiet companion in the dark. The towns near the falls, on both sides of the border, are gentle little places. There are old hotels with deep porches and rocking chairs. There are small museums tucked into quiet streets. Cafes glow warmly behind misted windows in the cooler months, with soft music drifting out. There are bookshops, ice cream stands, art galleries, gardens, and old churches with patient bell towers. Walking through these towns, you can feel the long history of the place, the many travelers who have passed through, the many quiet evenings spent in their cozy rooms. The falls themselves are always near, sometimes hidden behind trees or buildings, sometimes glimpsed at the end of a street, and their soft sound, ever present, threads gently through the towns like an old, beloved lullaby that has been sung there for a long, long time. There is a beautiful park called Niagara Falls State Park on the United States side, the oldest state park in the entire country. It was created in 1885 with the deep idea that such a place should belong to everyone, freely. Before then, much of the land near the falls had been crowded with private fences and paid attractions. Concerned citizens worked patiently for years to set the land aside as a public space, where visitors could stand close to the water without payment or barriers. Their effort took on the name of the Free Niagara Movement. Thanks to them, today anyone can walk along those paths, breathe that mist, hear that song, without needing anything more than time and a soft, willing heart. It is a quiet kindness handed gently down through many generations. The famous landscape designer Frederick Law Olmsted, who also helped design Central Park in New York, helped shape the parks around Niagara as well. His idea was simple and gentle, that the falls themselves should be the great wonder, and the parks should be quiet, naturalistic frames around them. Trees, paths, and gentle gardens, rather than grand buildings or heavy ornaments. Walking those paths today, you can still feel his patient hand in the way the trees lean over the water, the way the trails curve softly through the woods, the way each viewpoint of the falls seems to open as if by accident, like turning a page in a beautiful book. He understood that true beauty does not need decoration. It only needs space, patience, and a few well-placed paths along the river. On the Canadian side, there is a long, lovely promenade called Queen Victoria Park, named in honor of an old queen who never visited, but is gently remembered all the same. The park stretches along the cliffs, with gardens of tulips, roses, and chrysanthemums depending on the season. Soft lawns roll down toward the river. Benches are placed at thoughtful intervals so that travelers can sit and watch the falls in quiet. Squirrels move across the grass. Songbirds sing from the trees. Elderly couples walk slowly along the paths, hand in hand. Children run on the lawns, laughing softly. Beyond the gardens, the river curves and falls into its great silver curtain, while the gardens themselves bloom and rest, year after year, in a long, slow rhythm of blossom and falling water. In the spring, the gardens around the falls fill with tulips of every color. There are reds and yellows and pinks, soft creams, deep purples. Long, careful rows stretch out along the paths, planted by gentle hands the autumn before. The sight of so many tulips together is almost overwhelming, a soft sea of bowls held up to the sky. Bees drift lazily among them, their humming a small voice within the larger song of the river. The air smells of damp earth and growing things. The mist from the falls drifts in now and then, settling like dew on the petals. Standing among the tulips, you might feel as if you have stepped briefly into a painting, where every color is patient and every breeze soft, and the falls beyond seem only a quieter brushstroke in the same gentle scene. In the autumn, the same gardens are full of chrysanthemums in deep yellows and bronzes and warm reds. The trees of Goat Island and Queen Victoria Park turn to flame and gold, the leaves drifting one by one into the river. The air grows crisp. The mist rising from the falls takes on a softer, cooler quality. Children kick through the fallen leaves on the paths. Squirrels rush about, gathering acorns for winter. The light grows lower in the sky, more golden, more honeyed. The whole place feels gently slowed, as if it were preparing for a long, soft sleep. The falls themselves seem to take on the colors of the trees in the reflection, soft browns and amber tones rippling along the lower river. Autumn at Niagara is a quiet, perfect ending, just before the long, white hush of winter begins. When winter comes in earnest, the parks fill with fresh snow. Long, white expanses of perfect powder blanket, the lawns, the paths, the benches, the railings. The trees become tall, white statues. The river slows beneath thin sheets of ice along its edges. The falls themselves continue to roar, but their mist now freezes onto every surface near the cliff, building soft towers of white. The colored lights at night glow even more beautifully through the frozen mist, casting deep blues and pinks across the snow. There is a special hush in the air on those winter nights, a great quiet broken only by the long, low song of the falls. Walking through the snow, your breath rising in soft clouds, you can feel as if you have wandered into a vast, peaceful dream. There is a winter festival held each year at Niagara, called the Festival of Lights, when great displays of lights are arranged along the parks and gardens. Soft sculptures glow against the snow. Long arches of light stretch over the paths. Music drifts gently through the cold air. Visitors walk slowly together through the displays, breath rising in little clouds. Hands warmed in pockets. The river, glittering with frost, reflects all those colors gently in its ice. The falls themselves are bathed in their own glowing colors. Blending softly into the festival around them, there is a deep, kind sweetness about this time of year, when so many travelers come to see the lights together. It feels almost like a great, slow lullaby of color, carrying the cold of winter into something warm and shimmering and tender. The river above the falls, in the section just before the cliff, is called the Upper Rapids. Here, the water moves swiftly, dancing white and silver over hidden rocks. There are countless small drops and turns, each one bright in the sunlight. Mist sometimes rises from these rapids, even before the great cliff. Walking along the cliffside path, you can hear them clearly. A quick, joyful chatter of moving water. Birds drift just above their surface. Sunlight glitters on every wave. There is a sense of urgency in these rapids, but also a kind of joy, as if the river is racing happily toward its great, breathtaking moment. After standing there for a while, the slowness inside you seems to deepen by contrast, like watching a fast train pass while you yourself remain perfectly still. Below the falls, after all that energy and noise, the river finally enters the lower rapids, a long, churning stretch of green and white water. Standing on the cliff above, you can watch the river twist and roll, throwing up plumes of foam, its current still strong, still deep, still alive with the memory of its great fall. The water is colder there, cleaner, more vibrant in color. Light plays along its surface in shifting patterns. Eventually, the rapids settle. The river smooths. The whirlpool draws the water into its slow circle. And from there, the journey continues, gentle and unhurried, all the way to Lake Ontario. The lower rapids are like a long, soft exhale, the river breathing out everything it gathered in its great fall. A final song before the long quiet that follows. Many great writers and poets have visited Niagara and tried to set it gently into words. Charles Dickens stood beside it and called it solemn and beautiful. Mark Twain wrote of it with wit and wonder. Oscar Wilde, with his characteristic charm, made gentle jokes, but even he could not deny its quiet majesty. Painters set up their easels along the cliffs, mixing greens and silvers in attempts to capture its soft glow. Photographers spent hours waiting for just the right light, yet none of them, however gifted, ever quite caught the whole of the place. There is something about Niagara that always slips between the words beyond the brushstrokes, just outside the frame. Perhaps that is part of its tenderness, that no matter how many times we try to hold it, the falls remain beautifully their own. The painter Frederick Edwin Church made a particularly beloved painting of the falls in 1857, showing the broad sweep of the horseshoe in soft, glowing colors. When the painting was unveiled in New York, people stood in long, hushed lines to see it, and many were moved to tears. They felt as if they were standing at the very edge of the falls themselves. The painting later traveled to other cities, and great crowds gathered wherever it went. There is something tender about the idea of so many people, in so many distant places, all coming to see a quiet image of the same river. Even those who could never afford the long journey to Niagara could, for a few quiet moments, stand before that painting and feel the soft, dreamlike presence of the falls. Photography itself was very young when Niagara first became one of its favorite subjects. Some of the earliest landscape photographs ever made were of the falls. Photographers would carry heavy boxes of equipment along the cliffs, setting up tripods and patient glass plates. Each image required long, slow exposure, capturing the falling water as a soft, dreamy blur. Those old photographs, when we look at them today, seem to glow with a special kind of quiet, the river softened by time and patience into something almost ghostly. Imagining those early photographers, bent over their cameras in the cool mist, is itself a kind of sleepy poetry. They were doing something new, saving an image of something endlessly old, a small, brave act of stillness against the long, ceaseless motion of the water. There is a famous photograph of an enormous block of ice that once formed at the base of the falls, called the Ice Bridge. People used to walk across this great frozen mound during the coldest winters, sometimes carrying baskets, sometimes pulling small sleds. The ice bridge could rise dozens of feet high, an entire frozen landscape balanced gently on the river. Vendors set up stalls upon it, selling hot drinks and small souvenirs. Visitors strolled across, looking up at the falls towering above them. After one tragic accident in 1912, walking on the ice bridge was no longer permitted, but the memory of those crisp, hushed afternoons remains, gentle and bright, as if a small, white village had once flickered into being upon the frozen river before drifting softly away in the warmth of spring. Just downstream from the falls, hidden among the cliffs, are caves and small ledges where mist gathers and drips constantly. Some of these places are wet year-round, dressed in deep green moss, rare lichens, and tiny ferns. Few people visit them, as they are difficult to reach. But within them, life thrives in its own slow, quiet way. Salamanders move softly across the wet stones. Tiny insects skim through the damp air. Long, slow drops of water fall from above, plinking softly into small pools. These hidden places are like little secret rooms within the great cathedral of the falls, kept gently watered by the constant breath of the river. Even the smallest creatures there seem to live patiently, their lives slow and careful, in time with the long, ancient music of the place. The sound of Niagara has been studied gently by scientists, who note that its low rumble is what we call a kind of broadband sound, a great soft mix of many frequencies. It is similar, in some ways, to the deep noise of distant ocean waves or wind moving through a deep forest. It has been suggested that this kind of sound is especially soothing to the human mind, helping us drift into deeper rest. So many people who live near the falls or visit them often fall asleep more easily there. The river's voice covers all the small, sharp sounds of the world, softening everything, smoothing the edges of thought. As you listen tonight, perhaps in your imagination, perhaps to the soft music after this story, let that low, even hum carry you gently into the deep. The mist from Niagara not only feeds the plants, but also creates a unique microclimate, slightly cooler and more humid than the surrounding land. In this gentle climate, certain plants thrive that are rare elsewhere. Old, twisted cedars cling to the cliffs, their roots deep within the rock. Wild orchids bloom shyly in the damp meadows. Mosses and lichens layer themselves over every surface. Even the air smells different near the falls, with a soft, mineral sweetness. Botanists have spent careful years cataloguing the plants of the gorge, noting how each one fits into the breathing system of the place. So even the wildflowers and ferns near Niagara are part of the long, slow story of the river. The water, the rocks, the mist, the green, the small wings, all woven together in one quiet harmony. Long ago, before any roads or railways reached the area, travelers came to Niagara mostly by river or by foot. They followed long, winding trails through the woods, sometimes for many days. The first sight of the great mist, rising in the distance through the trees, must have felt almost holy. Some travelers wrote afterward that they cried, simply from the relief and wonder of finally arriving. Others stood in long silence at the cliff's edge, unable to speak. There are old letters, kept now in libraries and museums, in which travelers tried gently to describe what they had felt. Most of them seemed to agree that no preparation could match the reality. Niagara, when at last you stood beside it, was always softer, larger, deeper, more alive than any imagining. It was a wonder that always exceeded itself. In the 1800s, daredevils of all sorts came to perform at Niagara. Tightrope walkers stretched long ropes across the gorge and crossed them slowly, far above the swirling river. The most famous of these was a Frenchman known as Blondin, who walked across on a slender cable in 1859. He even crossed blindfolded, pushing a wheelbarrow, carrying his own manager on his back, and once, sitting halfway across to cook himself a small meal. From the cliffs above, crowds watched in hushed amazement. The river roared below, the wind tugged at his rope, and yet he kept his soft, careful balance, step by patient step. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that long, thin line stretched across the gorge and the slow, steady figure walking calmly along it, as if even the air itself held its breath. After Blondin, many other tightrope walkers came to try their own crossings. Some succeeded gracefully. Others turned back partway, retreating safely to one side. Eventually, the practice was gently discouraged, as it was felt that the falls themselves should be the main attraction, not human stunts. The long ropes were taken down. The crowds that gathered for those crossings drifted into other interests. But for a brief, shining time, the gorge was draped with these long, slender lines, and figures in soft costumes moved across them like living birds in slow, patient flight. The story of Blondin and his fellow walkers has long passed into legend, gentle and slightly unbelievable, like a dream half remembered. Yet it is part of the long, soft history of Niagara, a chapter written in courage, wind, and silver wire above the falling water. Even today, certain very rare and carefully approved acrobats are sometimes allowed to walk above the gorge, with safety harnesses and long, careful preparation. In 2012, an acrobat named Nick Wallender walked across Niagara on a tightrope strung above the Horseshoe Falls. The walk took only a few minutes, but felt much longer. He moved slowly, calmly, with great care, the mist rising around him, the great curtain of water pouring down beside him. Crowds watched in hushed wonder from both sides of the river. Helicopters drifted nearby, recording every soft step. When at last he reached the other side, there was a long, deep cheer that seemed to roll into the river itself. It was a quiet kind of magic, a gentle echo of the daredevils of old, set against the eternal song of the falls. There is a soft, dreamy folk legend among some indigenous traditions of the region, about a maiden of the mist. Different communities tell the tale in different ways, and some scholars believe it was shaped or invented later, but in many gentle versions, the story speaks of a woman who is taken into the falls and meets the spirit who lives within them. Some tellings describe her returning safely with wisdom, others say she becomes part of the mist herself, drifting forever within the silver curtains. As with all old stories, the meanings are layered and quiet, and they touch on things far older than words. Whether the tale is ancient or more recent, the truth at its heart is gentle, that the falls have always been seen as a place of deep, mysterious beauty, where the human and the wonderful softly meet. Today, the boats that carry visitors close to the falls are named the Maid of the Mist on the American side and the Niagara City Cruises on the Canadian side. They both wear gentle blue or red ponchos to keep their passengers dry. From far above, the boats look very small, like tiny petals drifting toward a great silver flower. They move carefully into the mist, bobbing softly on the swirling water. Their captains know the river well, after long, careful training. The boats have been making these journeys for many decades now, and millions of travelers have stood upon their decks, gazing upward in soft wonder. Each ride, though brief, is a kind of pilgrimage, a quiet visit to the very heart of the falls, where the mist and the rainbows wrap themselves softly around you. Niagara is also home to many gentle wedding stories. Couples have come there for centuries to marry, or to mark their engagements, or to celebrate anniversaries. There are quiet wedding chapels in the towns nearby, with soft windows looking out toward the river. Photographers know all the best places to capture couples beside the falls, in the mist, beneath the rainbows. Many couples leave with photographs that they will keep for the rest of their lives, framed gently on quiet shelves. The falls themselves seem to lend a kind of grace to such occasions, as if their long, steady song promises a kind of devotion. Imagine all the soft promises made there, year after year, generation after generation, drifting softly into the mist and then carried gently onward by the patient breath of the river. There is a quiet tradition among some visitors of writing little messages on stones or leaves and gently leaving them by the river as a small wish or remembrance. Most of these little offerings are eventually washed away by the rain or carried by the wind, but the act itself is sweet, a gentle nod to the long-standing sense that the falls are a place of meaning. People leave behind small notes for those they love. They leave behind hopes for the future. They leave behind goodbyes for those they have lost. The river receives all these small offerings without judgment, without weight, simply gathering them softly into its great onward flow. As you drift toward sleep, imagine your own quiet wish set gently upon a leaf and floated softly downstream, carried away into the long, kind dream of the river. In the early 20th century, a hydroelectric project called the Adam Beck Generating Station was built on the Canadian side. It is a great, beautiful building of stone and brick, with tall windows facing the river. Inside, enormous turbines turn slowly, gathering the energy of the falling water and sending it out as electricity. Even today, much of the electricity in southern Ontario comes from such stations along the Niagara River. The buildings themselves are works of patient architecture, with long, peaceful facades that look almost like cathedrals from a distance. Walking past one in the soft evening light, you might forget for a moment what they do, and simply notice their hush, their stillness, the way they stand calmly beside the river, like quiet stewards keeping a long, soft promise with the falling water. The river's water is quite clean today, thanks to many decades of careful work. Long ago, in earlier industrial days, parts of the river were less healthy, troubled by old factories and unkind practices. But over time, gentle laws and patient citizens have helped the river return to its older clarity. Today, fish thrive in it, birds drink from it, plants flourish along its banks. There is something deeply hopeful about that quiet recovery, the way a great river, given time and kindness, can softly heal. The Niagara of today is, in many ways, even healthier than it was a century ago. Its mist is fresh, its colors deep and clean, its life rich and varied. As you breathe slowly tonight, imagine that quiet recovery, that gentle return, like the slow exhale of a long-held breath at last let go. There is a long, beautiful trail called the Niagara Gorge Trail that runs along the cliffs below the falls. It winds for several miles, through forest and meadow, past lookouts and old benches. Walkers along the trail can see the river from many different angles. Sometimes high above, sometimes nearer to the water. Old stone walls mark some of the historic viewpoints. Wild grapevines drape over the railings. Birds call from the treetops. Far below, the river churns its long, green dance through the rapids and into the whirlpool. The trail has been walked by countless people over the years, by scientists and lovers, painters and weary travelers, by children on field trips and elders in slow, careful steps. Each one has added a soft footprint to the long, gentle path of the river's quiet companions. There is also a beautiful walking trail along the Canadian side, called the Niagara Parkway, which has been called by some travelers one of the prettiest drives in the world. It stretches for many miles, with manicured gardens, gentle picnic spots, and long views of the river. People have driven slowly along it for over a century, often with windows down, breathing in the soft river air. The road curves gently with the shape of the gorge. There are old monuments, beautiful houses, and shaded groves of trees along its length. Sometimes, between the trees, you catch a sudden glimpse of the river, glittering and slow, like the wink of an old friend. The parkway is a quiet ribbon laid carefully along the cliffs, joining gardens and forests and waters into one long, peaceful journey. The famous floral clock stands along the Niagara Parkway, a great clock face made entirely of carefully planted flowers. Its hands move slowly across a vast, living dial, telling the time in petals and leaves. Each season, gardeners replant the design with different flowers and patterns. Visitors come to admire it on long, slow walks, watching how the colors shift gently with the year. Bees drift quietly across its face. Butterflies pause on its hands. Even the time itself seems gentler there, marked not in the sharp ticks of metal, but in the soft growth of stems and blossoms. As you breathe slowly toward sleep, imagine that great clock, ticking patiently in the meadow, its hands moving across a sea of petals, its time measured in beauty rather than urgency. Just upriver from the falls, there is a small island called Three Sisters Islands, a gentle group of three little islets connected by old wooden footbridges. Walking out across these bridges feels almost magical, as the rapids of the river race past on every side in white, glittering streams. Standing on the smallest island, you are surrounded by water, with the great falls just out of sight. The wind moves softly through your hair. Mist drifts past in delicate curtains. Songbirds dart among the trees. It is one of the most intimate places near the falls. A small, tender step into the very current of the river without being swept away. Many travelers consider it one of their favorite quiet corners of Niagara, a place to stand briefly between the rushing water and the wide, patient sky. The towns of Niagara Falls, both on the New York side and on the Ontario side, share their name with the great waterfall itself. There is something deeply sweet about a town named for its softest, most beautiful neighbor. Children grow up there with the sound of falling water as part of their everyday life, woven into school days and Sunday mornings, into birthdays and quiet evenings. Many residents say they no longer notice the sound, but they would surely notice if it ever stopped. The towns have changed many times over the years. Buildings have come and gone. Streets have shifted, but the falls remain, faithful and slow, the deep heartbeat of the place, sounding gently through every season, lulling generations of children, parents and grandparents into the same long, kind dream of a river. The state of New York and the province of Ontario both honor the falls deeply. They cooperate in their care, sharing the responsibility of keeping the rivers clean. The parks open, the borders friendly. Officials from both sides meet quietly every so often to discuss how best to protect the place. Out of all the long history of borders and quarrels and quiet disagreements between nations, the gentle care of Niagara stands as a soft reminder that some things are best held in common. The river, after all, does not belong to either country alone. It belongs to itself, and to the long, slow conversation between earth and water and time. Every shared bridge, every joint plan, every kind agreement is a small, quiet promise made together by two countries who have come to love the same waterfall. In the deep night, when most of the world around the falls has gone to sleep, the river still flows. The colored lights are sometimes turned low. The boats are tied up at the docks, swaying softly. The shops are dark. The hotels glow only with the dim lamps of late-night windows. But the falls themselves never rest. They pour and pour beneath the stars. Their mist still rises. Their voice still hums. Owls call from the trees. Foxes pass softly across empty paths. The deep night belongs to the river, a long, quiet, sacred time when the falls are at their most ancient and most kind. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that night, that hush, that long, eternal song of falling water beneath a sky full of slow, faraway stars. The stars themselves often shine with great clarity above Niagara, especially in the deeper rural areas just outside the towns. On clear, moonless nights, the great band of the Milky Way stretches across the sky, its countless faint points of light reflected dimly in the river. Astronomers have visited the area for centuries, drawn by the dark skies. Travelers have stood in the parks at night and tilted their heads back, watching slow meteors streak softly across the dark. Imagine standing at the cliff's edge, with the great roar of the falls below and the soft hush of stars above, the whole universe gently unfolding around you, and only your own slow breath connecting one to the other. There is something about that scene that settles every part of the heart into a deep, quiet peace. In spring, especially during March and April, melting snow from a vast region pours into the river, swelling its current. The falls become especially powerful then, with extra mist rising into the air and rainbows gleaming brightly. The ice from the upper river drifts downstream in great flows, breaking softly against the rocks. Sometimes you can see whole white islands of ice tumble over the falls, vanishing into the swirling water below. The smell of damp earth fills the parks. Buds appear on the trees. Birds return from their long winter journeys, their songs filling the meadows. It is a quiet, hopeful time when the long winter sleep of the land begins to soften into wakefulness. And the river, fed by countless tiny streams of melting snow, sings just a little louder beneath the warm spring sun. Summer is the busiest season at Niagara, when warm days bring countless travelers from all over the world. The parks are filled with children. The boat tours run almost continuously. The photographs are endless. Yet even in the busiest hours, there are quiet places. Early in the morning, before the crowds arrive, the paths are nearly empty. Late at night, after the crowds have gone, the gardens are still and soft. Even within the busy parks, you can sometimes find a quiet bench overlooking a calm part of the river, where the hum of voices fades into the deeper hum of the falls. Summer at Niagara is like a long, rich symphony, with great loud passages and soft, hidden ones, every note woven into the same warm, golden, gently humid air. Autumn brings its own gentle magic to the falls. The trees turn slowly, leaf by leaf, into bright shades of crimson, amber, and gold. The mist of the falls catches those colors in soft reflections along the water. The crowds thin a little. The evenings grow cool. Long, slow walks along the parkway become especially beautiful, with leaves crunching softly underfoot and the air smelling of wood smoke and damp earth. Many writers and painters have called autumn the most poetic time at Niagara, when the place seems to wear its loveliest robes. As the days shorten, the colored lights of the falls glow ever earlier, painting the cool dusk with soft purples and pinks. It is a season of long sighs, of golden afternoons, of slow goodbyes whispered gently to the warmth of summer. Winter, of course, is a hush all its own. The falls are still strong, still loud, but everything around them slows. The trees shed their leaves, the crowds thin into small, hardy groups. The boat tours cease until the river warms again. The river edges build up with long, slow curtains of ice. The gardens rest beneath fresh snow. Even the colored lights at night seem softer, more dreamy against the white. Winter walkers wear long coats and scarves. Breath rising in soft clouds, the cold air sharpens every scent, every sound, every thought. The falls themselves, in their long, faithful song, become almost a kind of friend in winter. A steady presence in the deep cold, a reminder that even when the world seems still, the great rivers of life are still moving softly beneath the snow. There is a deep peace in knowing that the falls have been falling, in much the same way, for thousands and thousands of years, long before any city was here, long before any road, long before any visitor wrote a single word about them. The same river, finding the same cliff. The same water, falling into the same gorge. The same mist, rising into the same wide sky. As you drift toward sleep, imagine all those countless years, all those countless mornings and evenings, all those countless quiet nights. The falls have sung through them all. They were singing when the world was wild and young, and they sing still tonight. Gently, faithfully, while you rest in your bed, far away or near, breathing slowly with the long pulse of the world. And yet, the falls will not always be exactly where they are tonight. They will keep their slow, patient walk upstream, year by year, century by century. In thousands of years, they will stand somewhere a little different. In tens of thousands of years, they may move farther still. Eventually, scientists believe, the falls will travel so far back that they will reach Lake Erie itself and at last grow quiet, blending softly into a wide, calm river that is many, many ages from now, far beyond any of us, but it is gentle to remember that even this great wonder is quietly changing. Like everything else in the soft, breathing world, nothing is held still forever. And yet, in the long, kind movement of all things, even the falls themselves are simply walking gently home. For now, though, the falls are here. Their water is falling, their mist is rising, their rainbows are drifting, their lights are glowing, their stars are turning quietly above them in the deep, soft night. Somewhere along the cliffs, a few late travelers are still standing, watching the water in silent wonder. Somewhere in a nearby town, a small lamp is glowing in a sleeping family's window. Somewhere in the deeper darkness, owls are calling, foxes are walking, fish are drifting through the long, deep pools. And here, in your bed, far from all of it, the soft idea of the falls is settling gently around you. You are part of the same world, You are breathing in the same air. You are resting beneath the same patient stars. And the river, somewhere, is still singing softly toward the dawn. And now, as our long, slow visit to the falls begins to gentle into its final hush, let us hold a few last, soft thoughts together, like small, glowing pebbles gathered into the palm of a quiet hand. Niagara, in all its many moods, is in truth a single, slow exhale of the land. Lake Erie breathes outward toward Lake Ontario, and the river is simply the long, gentle path of that breath. The falls themselves are the deepest part of that exhale, the soft place where the breath bends downward, returns to itself, and rises again as mist into the wide, patient sky. Everything about the place is part of one slow, breathing motion. The water, the mist, the rainbows, the trees, the wildflowers, the birds, the stars, the towns, the hearts of all the travelers who have ever come and gone. All of it. Simply breathing together, gently, gently, year after year. There is something deeply soothing in the thought that the river never stops. While we sleep, it flows. While we dream, it falls. While we wake, it keeps on flowing. There is no morning when Niagara is not pouring itself softly over its old, beloved cliff. Even tonight, as you rest, the falls are murmuring beneath the same cool, dark sky. Mist is rising, stars are turning, rainbows are forming and dissolving in the long, low light. Foxes are walking quietly along the edges of the parks. Owls are calling from the trees. Small fish are slipping softly through the deep, dark pools. The world is alive, and at the same time, the world is at rest. Both things are true, gently and at once, like two soft hands folded together. You can take the river with you, in some quiet, private way, into your sleep tonight. You can imagine its long, soft sound just beneath your pillow, like a deep, reassuring lullaby that has been sung for thousands of years. You can imagine the mist drifting gently across your forehead, cooling away the last weight of the day. You can imagine the rainbows arching across the inside of your closed eyes, soft and slow and kind. And you can imagine yourself simply resting, simply breathing, held quietly in the long, patient embrace of a great and faithful river. So now, dear listener, let us gently begin our slow goodbye, not a hurried goodbye, not a sharp one, but a soft, slow farewell. The way the day says goodbye to the last light of the sun, easing softly into the quiet of evening. Your work here, tonight, is done. Your only task now is to rest. Let your body sink a little deeper into the bed beneath you. Let your shoulders settle, soft and warm. Let your hands grow heavy, loose and still. Let your jaw soften. Let your forehead smooth. Feel the gentle weight of your blanket, holding you kindly, like a long, slow embrace. There is nowhere you need to go. There is nothing more you need to know. The river of the day has carried you all the way to its quiet pool. And here, now, you may simply float. If you have enjoyed this slow, soft journey to the falls, perhaps later, when sleep is far behind you and the morning is bright again, you might gently subscribe to Science for Bedtime, or share this little story with a friend who needs a kind, quiet path into rest. Such small, thoughtful gestures help our quiet candle keep glowing in the dark. But for now, please, do not think of any of that. Let the day's small tasks drift away. Behind your closed eyes, imagine the great falls one last time, the wide curve of the horseshoe bending its long silver arc, the American Falls draped in its steady, shining curtain, the slender bridal veil shimmering like spun lace, the mist rising, the rainbows drifting, the soft, eternal hum of moving water. Imagine yourself standing for one final, gentle moment at the cliff's edge, the cool air around you, the faint salt of mist on your lips, and then, slowly, let the image soften, let it fade. Let the river carry it gently downstream into the deep, sweet dark. Now, as the last of our words falls softly away, let only the music remain, a long, kind tone, set quietly at 432 soft cycles. Let it hold you. Let it cradle you. Let it carry you gently into sleep. Good night. And sleep deeply.